Just a few months ago, I made a video talking about the best platform in the world of Airsoft. Talking about sniper rifles, shotguns, ARs, subguns, and LMGs, all respectively. But I only did it from the lens of talking about spring weapons and AEGs. And some of you, in the comment section of that video, asked if I would do a video specifically talking about GBB and HPAs in relation to the AEG world, and today, I think I'm about to make all of your dreams come true. Not that dream, though. Not that one. Welcome back to the Wolfsden, everyone, and to all of our new viewers, welcome to the channel. I greatly appreciate you stopping by today's video, and for one that I think is going to be rather enlightening for a lot of people, whether you be new players or experienced players in the sport of Airsoft. And today, as I mentioned in the opening, we are going to be talking about GBBRs, HPA, and AEGs, all respectively kind of comparing and contrasting the three different operating systems, if you will. Jumping in just for a second here, guys. Hi, Wolf here. I hope you guys are enjoying the start of today's video. We're going to get into the platforms here in just a second, but before we do, I have a couple of things that I want to show you guys that actually are really, really cool, and that you guys actually can see coming up in some future videos. Check these dudes out. So firstly, before anyone asks in the comments, no, these are not available for sale. I'm not selling them. They're not part of the merch store. Although if you want to get some super, super badass decal stickers and some comfy ass t-shirts, be sure to check out Wolfsden Apparel. Unfortunately, these aren't on there, but there are some decal stickers and some other things. But I mean, look at these things. Look, we got some really, really cool wall art here. These, really quick, show some love to Mama and Papa Lone Wolf. They gave these to me as a Christmas gift this past year, and they are badass. I mean, just look at these things. So we got the common phrase at the beginning of pretty much every video, welcome to the Wolfsden, and of course we have the channel logo. These are all 3D, they are laser cut, I think they're pine or cedar. They smell great. The reason I'm showing you guys, these to you guys is because on the backs of them, they are meant to be hung up on, say, a wall or something like what's behind me, and the reason I have them in front of you is I would like your guys' input on what you guys think I should do with these. You want them to be put up behind me in videos, in streams, whatever it is you want me to do with these bad boys, let me know, give me some ideas. So I kind of want them to go up behind me during videos like this where I'm at the table, because they're really, really cool. They're very, very nicely edged and everything. And if I had them back illuminated, that would be pretty neat, I think. Anyway, thanks for your time. I just want to show these off. Again, down in the comments, give Mama and Papa Lowo some love down there. They got me these. I had no idea they were doing that, and they are super, super cool. So show some love to them down there, and we'll get back in today's video. Thanks, guys. I will let you all know, some of you might be a little butthurt by the takes that I have in today's video. Firstly, it's okay to be wrong. You live in America, or at least I do. It's okay to have the incorrect opinion. But if I say anything that you don't agree with, or that you think I have been misinformed, or that has been misrepresented in my time playing, please let me know down in the comments below. I would absolutely make a follow-up video if there's something I missed with any of the particular systems that we're going to be talking about today, or if I simply have a bad scope on the situation at hand. Following that up, of course, I do also want to let you guys know that all of the things I'm going to be saying come from my own experience with each system, and talking to other players who have literal decades in the sport just like myself. So, getting right into it, we're going to jump into the GBB, or gas blowback system, first. Now, as some of you might know, I've talked about this a couple of times over on streams or in other videos. GBBs are probably the systems that I am familiar with the least out of the three. Obviously, the main staple of the channel is an HPA. I use a lot of AEGs. I do my own tagging, all that sort of stuff. But GBBs are probably the ones that I steer clear from the least, and we'll get into why here in just a moment. But I want to cover the pros of the system first, give it a fair shake, and then we'll talk about why I tend not to go for them in the first place. This is the GBB for our represented today. This, for anyone who does not know, is the sidearm of choice that I have in every single video. Granted, it doesn't get as much love as it probably should, but if you were to ask me what sidearm I would go with, either real steel or an airsoft, it would absolutely be my FNX 45 TAC, which is what this is. Easily one of the best performing GBBs in my entire collection, so it feels right to say that this is the one that we'll be representing today, as I've had the most fun with this one out of all of them. TLDR, for anyone that doesn't know what a gas blowback system is, it is a system that typically holds gas, like green gas, duster gas, red gas, inside the magazine, like so. You can see there's a little valve there, just behind, and then on the top there is a valve as well, that when you would insert here and pull it back and then, you know, fire, well, it's not going to fire, of course, because, you know, I'm being safe. Okay, all joking aside, the gun was completely empty, there was nothing in it. GBBRs use, as you saw just there, they use gas to propel the nozzle inside and thus send a BB out the other end. Generally they are blowback, so you can see there it kicks to the rear. In this case the gun is completely empty, so it locks. If I hold it down it's not going to do anything. Just go ahead and put the hammer back down. You can see, well, all good. The first one was for goofs. Totally safe, we're good. Don't worry, I didn't just dust pop. So talking first about the pros of the GBB system, whether it be a rifle, a handgun, an SMG, there are even GBB LMGs now, which is really, really cool. The thing that I think the GBBR class of weapons has over all of the other ones is realism, by far. If you're someone like me who lives somewhere that doesn't believe in the Second Amendment,
oh, brother, this guy stinks!
This is probably as close as you could possibly get to shooting a real gun because of the recoil impulse, the feeding, just everything about GBBs is as real as Airsoft can get, from mag size to the function of the gun, the way it works internally. It is honestly some of the most fun you can have in the sport of Airsoft if you're trying to have a real simulated, like, mock firearm, if you will, for, say, like, police force, military guys. If you're looking for guns that are going to simulate real-world weapons the best, without, you know, firing lead out the other end and potentially hitting somebody with an actual round that could unalive them, if you will, GBBRs make the best case for that because of all of the realistic stuff that you get with them. There are a section of gas-powered systems that do not have blowback, and that's a whole different discussion, but in this case we're talking about blowback specifically, and they give the most real feel in terms of operation, in terms of recoil pattern, in terms of just overall feel and performance out of the bunch. Now, the other thing that is generally the case, not always, there are some outliers, especially within the realm of pistols, and I'm sure many of you out there can also attest, GBBs generally, not always, are very well built. And obviously it goes without saying, they kind of have to be, with the amount of pressure that is built up in the mag and then released whenever you pull the trigger. The internals have to be up to a certain standard. They have to be well built enough to sustain that amount of pressure, that amount of oomph behind it when it does fire. So that's another good thing about GBs, is they're generally well built, not just internally but externally. My FNX here, very nicely built. It's got a very nice polymer frame and a very, very nice CNC'd aluminum upper, if I'm not mistaken, either aluminum or steel. I believe it's aluminum. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the point still stands. Very, very nice just across the board, regardless of what system you're using, whether it be green gas, duster gas, red gas, or in this case, the Desert Eagle. This one in particular being a KWA with the, for those of you that are familiar, that mysterious third pin that a real Deagle should not have, in my personal opinion. You can fight me on that, but this one in particular is in the CO2 department rather than, say, green gas, which for anyone who's never seen a green gas bottle, I'm gonna cover the brand, but because I'm not, I'm not sponsored by them, not sponsored by anyone in this video, so, but I mean, just company, I'm just saying. Anyway, this is, typical green gas. It's got the little nozzle and you fill in, no problem. with the valve on the back, or, well, in this case, it's on the back of the mag. Generally, it's on the bottom. But that really kind of rounds out the GBB. If you're looking for realism, if you're looking for like nicer quality replicas that, you know, you could drop, do whatever. Generally speaking, not all. Again, there are some outliers, but GBBs have those two items in spades. Now, let's talk about some things that I think the GBBR stands, or just GBB stands in general, tend to forget. And it's something that kind of irks me from time to time, if I'm being entirely honest. And that is, GBBs they're expensive to run with. Just for reference, the pistol itself, this one, last I checked, runs between $200 and $300 just on its own. That's with no optic, no light, nothing. Just the pistol itself runs for between $200 to $300. I think actually it might be a little more expensive now than when I got it. But the real kicker, one of these bad boys, if you wanted to get just one mag, because the gun does come with one or two, I can't remember exactly, but it does come with one for sure, so that's included with the price. One mag is about $35, just for one mag. And that trend does not just stop with pistols. GBBR, like rifles, like full-size rifles that use like standing mags, because they are generally proprietary mags, they don't all use the same system, are very, very expensive compared to, say, other mags that we'll talk about here in a little bit. So when it comes to the price tag that is associated with GBBRs, I don't know that people talk about it enough. They are extremely expensive, especially when you start talking about how much you have to pay for the gas that you put into them. Gas is not necessarily extremely expensive, but it adds up very quickly just because of how much you're going to refill them, and depending on how efficient the particular replica in question is. So, yes, they're really, really cool for realism and for, you know, the quality that you get for them, but it comes with the caveat that they're rather pricey, and I don't think anyone's going to argue with that sentiment, even if you are like a big GBB user. They're expensive, and that's just kind of part of it. Moving on to another thing that I don't think gets talked about enough in the GBB world. This is more specifically relating to green gas-based systems like this one here. They are seasonal weapons. And if you don't know what I mean, for reference in my particular case, some of you might have it better off, some of you might have it worse, but for my particular case, I could effectively use this pistol right here, because it is green gas, for maybe a third out of the year. If not less. I'm not even kidding. This particular pistol, if the seals and everything are well maintained, everything in it is running as well as it possibly could be, a third out of the year I could actually use it reliably. And it's not that the gun is bad. The reason is, for those of you that don't know, gas reacts differently to different temperatures. Typically, green gas, if I'm not mistaken, likes to operate between, I think it's between 60 degrees and 35 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the target range, somewhere in there. Someone down in the comments, please correct me. I know I'm probably off on one of those. But there is an ideal temperature for green gas. And for someone like me who lives in the Midwest, where temperatures get much hotter than that and much colder than that, for a large chunk of the year, that means that GBBRs, especially bigger rifles that aren't necessarily sidearms, but running it as a primary, not the best idea. Because, and I've seen this so many times in my own experience out at Bing, at other fields, you run into a situation where it's just cold enough where the gun runs really, really hard because the gas is having to work so much harder to cycle the gun back because it's colder, because it's warmer. They just don't run super efficiently. I've seen somebody run with a really, really nice 417 that was GBB'd, and many of you out there, you know what I'm talking about, like the really nice GBB 417s, the HKs. He got maybe 10 rounds out of a single mag, and he was completely out of gas because of the temperature. And it just completely makes those rifles ineffective, and sometimes even pistols as well, even as sidearms. They are completely ineffective at a certain temperature. And I hate to break it to you, if you live somewhere like I do, where the temperature fluctuates from a lot, like it can be kind of cold in the mornings to really hot in the daytime, and then later afternoon it's cold again. You are absolutely screwed if your primary is a GBB, because there's no telling how it's going to react unless you have it absolutely dialed. And I can't comfortably say to any particular person, regardless of how long you've been playing, that that's not going to be the case for you, because it is so case specific with the weather. Now, if you live somewhere where the temperature is always the same and consistently, like you can run it consistently, GBBRs are a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to diss on GBBRs by any means. They are a lot of fun. I love just running around my FNX when I can, but that's so the times where I'm able to do that are so slim and far between that it almost doesn't even make it worth it sometimes. But all that said, keep in mind GBBRs are still very, very fun platforms to use. They're very realistic for training aids for those of us that can't reliably go out to a range either because there's none available or because we live somewhere where firearms are not readily accessible. GBBRs are absolutely a solid platform, but they come with two really big caveats, which is they are seasonal, whether you agree with that or not. It is kind of the case, and they are very expensive, which I don't think anyone is necessarily going to deny. They are rather pricey to run, just from the get-go. Anyway, that's all I have to say for GBBRs. If there's anything I missed, please let me know down in the comments below. And we're going to move right along to HPA systems right now. Moving on to HPA systems. This is a rifle that many of you should be very familiar with if you aren't new to the channel. But if you are, this is my Remington ACR with a Polarstar F2. Very, very nicely set up little rifle here. It is, of course, the main staple of the channel, and I like this guy a lot. Behind AEGs, I would say HPAs are probably the second most popular, at least here in the States, and it doesn't go without good reason. For starters, HPA systems, by and large, are incredibly simple. And what do I mean by that? Well, there aren't a lot of moving parts inside of here that can go wrong. For the most part, you have your poppet and you have your pressures and stuff like that you have to worry about, but the only thing that really moves is the nozzle. The only place that there can be a malfunction in terms of like the actual motion and everything going around is in the nozzle. So for that reason, they are incredibly simple and for the most part tend to be very, very nice to you once you have them set up. It can take a little bit to get them set up, but for the most part, they are incredibly simple systems, and for that reason, they are incredibly reliable once you have them all dialed in and ready to rock. And you don't really have to mess with them once you actually get them set in. And for that reason, they are very, very attractive to people who aren't very good at teching, say on a GBBR or an AEG. Not a diss, I don't mean it like that. It's just a fact. They are very attractive, I can say from experience. It's far easier to work on this guy or the Night Wraith compared to, say, an AEG because there just are so few parts inside of this thing. With that as well, they can be extremely high performing, which, again, a very attractive feature of HPA systems. You can get a lot for a little, so to speak. For so few moving parts, they can be incredibly accurate, incredibly efficient, and where GBBRs can sometimes lack in the efficiency when it comes to being seasonal, HPAs are not, by any means. I've run this thing in the coldest temperatures we have, I've run this in the hottest temperatures, and it's always been consistent, across the board. So you might be asking, well, Wolf, it sounds like you're describing the HPA as like the perfect system. It's very simple, very high performing, and yes, you would think that. But there are, again, just like GBBRs, there's a couple things that you should be aware of before going into the world of HPA. First and foremost, they can be kind of heavy, and not the guns themselves. It's very easy to make a very lightweight system. This one here is, granted, this one's a very, very nice construction. It's almost entirely aluminum upper and polymer lower. So this one in particular is a little heavy. It's about 7 to 8 pounds in total if I have it all kitted up. But where you get some added weight, and I think any HPA user can agree, is when you start throwing this bad boy into the mix, because for anyone that does not know, you have to have a tank of some kind for your gun to run. This one in particular is a full like a metal tank. It's not one of the carbon fiber ones, so it's the heaviest probably out of the bunch. But this does add quite a bit of weight if you're going to permanently affix it to your rig, as I do by attaching this into a pouch on the back of my plate carrier anytime that I want to use an HPA system, which also comes with the caveat of possibly limited mobility. Now, of course, there are much lighter tanks. There are smaller tanks. There are tanks that if you have a buffer tube system, this one does not, it becomes the like buffer tube on your stock, which is pretty neat. There's a lot of different options for tanks, but it's something to consider if you're going to be getting into HPA, is that you got to keep in mind, if you want an HPA gun, you're no longer just taking the gun with you, you have to have a tank to go with it, which I think sometimes is a turnoff for some people because they don't want to lug around that extra weight, which is totally fine. If that's the case, then maybe HPA isn't for you, and just go after, say, GBBR or AEG, depending on your situation. The other thing about HPA systems that I'm sure many of you are aware of, just like GBBRs, they can be pretty expensive. Starting out, this gun, before I HPA'd it, was a nice $300-ish plus shipping because I had it shipped over from overseas. So, off the rip, as an AEG, kind of a pricey gun, probably like a mid-tier to a more pricey weapon system. And then I took a very, very expensive HPA system and threw it into it, making this a system that is close to $1,000 just right in front of you, not including any of the stuff that goes onto the rails, none of that. Just the gun on its own with the HPA system is close to $1,000. Again, just like GBRs, very expensive. Now, where it can change, if you're someone like me, is you're not paying for air. Now, my field in particular, Bing, does not charge for air, which I'm very thankful for. If you have a scuba shop, they also sometimes will not, and some fields on their own, just like Bing, do not force you to pay for HPA, which is super cool. Of course, if you're at a field where they do, that does tend to add up just like green gas or any gas that you would use for a GBBR would, but again, that's entirely situational. To make the point clear though, they are incredibly expensive, or they can be incredibly expensive, depending on the system you go with, what you're putting it in, and what all you do to it. So, another thing just to consider. The last thing I want to talk about when it comes to HPA systems is something that I'm sure you're all aware of, and that is the player factor behind HPA. HPA has a bit of a rap because of some bad characters in the Airsoft sphere. You've all seen the videos of somebody just absolutely dumping on some innocent player because they think they're cheating, because they think they're doing whatever it may be. You know, we all know the burnt patch kid.
Dude, what the heck?
What?
Why would you do that?
Why are you saying what?
Did you spill all of that guy?
Yeah, he burned my patch.
Oh, hi. Thanks for checking in. I'm still a piece of garbage.
We all know that situation. Unfortunately, a lot of those incidents happen with HPA systems. So, if you pick up an HPA system, you have to be willing to not make those decisions. You have to, be mature enough to not just absolutely let it rip on some poor rental kid because it looks like, or you think that they're cheating. You've got to be the bigger person when it comes to using an HPA system. You can't be flipping it down onto the giggle switch mode and just letting somebody have it at any given moment. It takes a little bit more responsibility when it comes to a system like this with a high fire rate or just a higher power in general, because these systems, they can have a lot of oomph behind them. This one, it can get up there. The Night Wraith can also get up there, as some of you know. Both of them are very, very spicy if I let them get to that point, but I have to make the conscious decision not to do that. So that is a factor as well with HPA systems. It doesn't make them bad. Inherently, HPA systems are not bad whatsoever. It's just you have to be cognizant and be responsible with them in using them such that you don't turn into the next bad guy with an HPA gun at your local field. Most likely getting your ass chewed out by the refs, other players, and potentially getting kicked out from your favorite fields because you decided to be, well, a piece of shit. All that to say, HPA systems, very simple, very high performing, but they come with a couple of caveats that they're not entirely bad, but just things to consider when getting into an HPA system. Which does bring us to our last system of this video, and arguably the best system out of the bunch. So, let's get into the AEG system. Wolf, you fraud, I can't believe you would do this. You say that GBBRs are unreliable, unusable, and downright expensive. But you're ignoring the fact that GBBRs are incredibly fun to use, and you can even HPA adapt them to make them much more cost efficient if you're in a position where you can't use them all the time. HPA makes it far easier, and to make matters worse, you don't even have a GBBR, you're only using a gas blowback pistol to showcase that particular setup. Firstly, holy lord, chillax, my dude. Yes, you are correct. I did skip over the part where GBBRs and HPA can merge into one item, and you can have a GBBR that uses an HPA adapter and runs very well in pretty much every climate. You're correct. And secondly, how dare you accuse me of such things? You really think I would come into this video unprepared, without some sort of counter to anyone who would say such things? Who's the fool now?
Shit. Got your ass.
Behold! My GBBR. For the unfamiliar, this is my MP9. I showed this off a little while ago, about a week ago at this point, showing off my newest addition to my collection, which is, of course, a GBBR, and it got here just in time for this video to come out, so yes, I will talk about it. And because I can hear even more raging comments just like what I had here a second ago, of how I'm a fraud and didn't cover GBBRs well enough, and all you simps out there for GBBRs, relax, okay, I got you. Yes, you are correct. You can run a GBBR system with an HPA, and running HPA in a replica like this makes it run super efficiently pretty much in any climate, just like other HPA systems. So, yes, there is a way to make GBBRs work pretty much in any climate, make them much more viable and much less expensive, especially if you get an adapter that lets you use mags from other replicas, such as an M4 or a MP5. There are adapters for a lot of common mags in the AEG world that can convert your GBBR into something a little bit more attainable. So yes, very good point. However, they still come with the cost of the GBBR replica itself, which can be a bit pricey, as I mentioned before, and the adapters themselves can also be rather pricey. Granted, you're only buying one of them instead of a bunch of mags. In the MP9's case, it makes it much easier for mag storage and not having to pay the rather pricey amounts for just a single mag, or sometimes the triples, depending on where you can get them. So it helps with that end. And it also helps in gas price, because you're not having to pay for green gas, duster gas, red gas, if your field is like mine, where you don't have to pay for air, or if you have a scuba shop that'll do it for free, which some do. Not all of them, to be clear, but some do, which is very nice. But it still comes with the inherent downsides of GBBRs, in that it has a lot of moving parts. Upgrade availability is limited, even with an HPA system, because all of the internals remain the same. So if, for say, you have a GBBR that is not super parts compatible, or the parts are not super available in the States, or wherever it is you live. So all that to say, yes, HPA does help the GBBR scene. GBBRs are not the first thing I would recommend. Not a slight whatsoever. This thing is awesome. You guys are going to see a lot more of this little guy in the very near future, and I'm having a great time doing some testing, kind of getting him broke in. And with the demons hopefully quelled a little bit, we're going to move on to our next platform that I think is still far more valuable and far more available than something like this. And for our last and arguably best system, we have the AEG system. One of my personal favorites out of the bunch. Obviously, my heart belongs to the HPA and ACR that we just had up here a second ago. But if we're being real, AEGs, in my personal take, you're welcome to disagree, I think AEGs are honestly the best system out there, and there's a couple of reasons why. Firstly, getting into it, this is my personal J&G 416, or 614 as they call it, because they don't have the trades to it. And in my mind, he makes a good representative for the AEG class that we're going to be talking about today. Starting off, AEGs are extremely accessible. If you've ever perused, whether it be Evike, Airsoft GI, Red Wolf, any of those stores, AEGs are everywhere. And there's a good reason for that. They are extremely accessible, extremely reliable. Anybody can go and pick up an AEG and have fun with it. They are incredibly accessible, and for that reason, they make really good starter guns. And my personal opinion, if you're just getting into the start of Airsoft, AEGs are the place to start. The other thing that I do enjoy about the AEG system is how easy they are to maintain and the ability to maintain them extremely easily. In this case, this guy right here, I have never even cracked him open and he runs like an absolute dream. Never had any issues with this particular gun whatsoever. He doesn't get a lot of love necessarily on the channel, but he is a loner gun for a reason. Meaning, not loner as in like he's all alone, but loner as in I loan him out to people when they are in need of a gun. And it's because AEGs are super easy to maintain and super, super reliable, as I mentioned before. I've never actually done anything to the internals on this gun whatsoever. And that is because of the very venerable AEG system. But of course, since they are mechanical, and we'll get into this a little bit as well, there is that eventuality that they will break down, but we'll get to that. The other thing that I think AEGs have over the other two systems entirely is cost. Now, what I talked about how HPA systems, GBBRs, can be really expensive to run, AEGs are not whatsoever. All you need to get running is ammo, the gun, and a battery. That is it. If your gun's in working order, you have a good battery, and your ammo is good, you can go out and just have fun the entire day, no problems, no questions asked whatsoever. You don't need gas, you don't need a tank, you don't need any extra stuff, you don't need anything. You can just have a gun like this, and a good mag, good ammo, and just have fun. Especially if you're on a budget and you just only have maybe a couple $100 to throw into it, and you can just get like a nice budget gun. There are so many options out there in the AEG platform to get started in the world of Airsoft that aren't piles of shit, quite frankly. They run well, they do good, and they are incredibly upgradable when you eventually need to do so. Speaking of upgrades, there are a plethora of upgrade options out there for the AEG system, which again helps in that cost when something eventually breaks down, which unfortunately that is the case with any system like this. Sooner or later something will go wrong and you'll have to upgrade it or replace it. There are plenty of options out there to help you do that, and the AEG system, bar none, has the most options out there when compared to an HPA or GBBR. It's like a upgrade palooza. Upgradability, again, big win for the AEG. Whether you want it to be a DM, like, I say this loosely, but whether you want it to be a DMR, in that you want it to reach out really far and hit somebody at a really far distance, but you don't necessarily need rate of fire, you can do that. If you want something short and compact with a high rate of fire, not necessarily looking for accuracy and range, but just something that's going to get a lot of rounds down range, like say an LMG, you can do that. If you want something in the middle, kind of like what this is, where it's got a little bit of everything, rate of fire, accuracy, precision, all of that, you can do that. With the other systems, sometimes you have to pick and choose. AEGs, you don't always have to if you don't want to. You can get a little bit of everything. With that, though, comes the one downside, and I've kind of been alluding to this the entire time I've been talking about the AEG. There are a lot of moving parts between the motor, between the gears, the piston, the cylinder. There are a lot of things that can go wrong, where an HPA system, like I mentioned, doesn't have that. It has just the nozzle. That's the only moving part, aside from the barrel, which, all three systems have as well. Outside of that, the AEG has infinitely more points of impact where something can go wrong, something can break, something can get jammed up. So, from that standpoint, these are the most complicated, for sure, and they can be the most vulnerable, if you will. GBBRs are a close second because there are a lot of moving parts, recoil, all that sort of stuff. They are a close second, but again, because they are built to withstand those heavier pressures, they tend to not have as many problems, in my experience. There are horror stories, don't get me wrong, with GBBRs, and there are also horror stories with AEGs. But it's because there are so many extra points of failure in an AEG where something can just absolutely cripple your gun. Probably the most common is motors and gears, because those teeth will eventually wear out if they're not very good. Same with the piston. the teeth on them that help the whole system move. I mean, it's basically like a mini motor for all of my car nerds out there. It's like a one-cylinder motor, if we're being real. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and that will eventually go wrong if you play long enough. So that is something to consider as well with the AEG. But as I mentioned, with all those moving parts, that also comes a lot of customization, a lot of individuality in how you want to build out a gun at any given time. And it gives you a lot of options, a lot of space to kind of experiment and do different stuff that HPA and GBRs may not have. So, for that reason, I've already kind of said it, AEGs, in my personal opinion, if you're looking to get a new gun, if you're looking to get into the sport for the very first time, honestly, I would say go with an AEG. There's not a lot of competition in my mind for a lot of reasons. It's not that GBBRs are bad, it's not that HPA is bad, it's not that Springers are bad. I have my very nice Springer behind me. I have another spring gun behind me. That one's incredibly fun. My HPAs are incredibly fun. GBBs are very fun. AEGs are also very fun. And it's not necessarily to dissuade anyone. If you're really set on getting a GBBR or getting an HPA, do it. If that's what you want to do it.
Do it!
If you're still on the fence about whether or not you should get a GBBR, if you should get an HPA, or you should get an AEG, especially if it's your first gun off the rip, I would recommend going with an AEG just to start out. Test the waters, if you will. Experiment. See what you like, what you don't. Because AEG gives you the ability to kind of have some wiggle room and figure out what you want to improve on, what you could improve on, or what is just fine the way it is. And with that said, thank you all so much for watching. I know this was a bit of a longer video. Thank you so much for sticking through it with me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If there's anything at all that I missed that you think I need to come back and cover again in a part 2, please let me know. This was a video in response to you guys asking for me to talk about GBBRs and HPAs after I did my breakdown of AEGs and Springers in weapon class. So, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys thought. If I did a good job here in expressing my own experience and my own opinions, if you will. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. We've got even more videos just like this coming out. Obviously gameplay videos. I have a review in the works, if you will, another deep dive that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. And I've got a couple other videos that are a little bit outside the norm, kind of like this one. So if you like this video, you like me seeing me sit down and kind of talk with you guys and discuss things in more nerd talk, if you will, don't worry, we've got some videos coming that I think you guys will like a lot. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Best way, of course, to support the channel is by checking out Wolfsden Apparel, where you can get yourself some super badass decal stickers or some comfy ass t-shirts. I do want to let you guys know as well, one last thing before I close out. I will not have a video next week, a long form video. Just letting you know, I am taking a week to myself to kind of do some prep work for some upcoming videos. And I will not have a video coming next week. If you don't see one, don't worry. I am not dead. I am just fine. I am working on some videos that I am super excited for to show you guys in the coming months. So in the meantime, if you've missed any videos, feel free to go back and watch some of my older gameplay videos, other reviews, deep dives. The entire channel playlist will be in the description, and I'll put it in the pinned comments for you if, for whatever reason, you want to go back and see some of my original videos. Feel free to do so if you haven't already. There are some funny ones out there, but I promise you, I'm a little more awkward in the beginning than I am now. Granted, I'm still a little awkward if being real here. But nonetheless, you guys all have a good one. Thank you so much for sticking to the end of today's video. I greatly appreciate your support. And as always, this has been Wolf, and I hope to see you guys next time I hit the field.